It was pouring rain, she didn't know his name, didn't ask what happened, she just pulled over, offered a ride to a wounded soldier limping through the storm. What happens when a simple act of kindness changes two lives forever? She made him tea, gave him a blanket, let him sleep on her couch while her daughter dreamed in the next room. He left before sunrise, no goodbye, just a medal left by the sink, and a silence that stayed. Weeks later, as foreclosure loomed and her world began to collapse, there was a knock at the door, and standing outside wasn't the bank, it was the soldier she'd helped, and this time, he didn't come alone. Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The rain hadn't stopped in hours. It drummed steadily on the windshield of Emily Rose's pickup truck as she drove the winding two-lane road just outside Millfield, Pennsylvania, a town so small most folks could recognize every license plate in the grocery store parking lot. It was the kind of rain that crawled down your spine even when you were indoors, cold, uninvited. Relentless. Emily glanced at the clock on the dashboard, 7:46 p.m. She should have been home by now, but the old delivery van at the bakery where she worked broke down again, and she'd stayed late, helping her boss tarp it up against the storm. She didn't complain, she never did. That wasn't who she was. At 35, Emily lived a quiet life, modest, hardworking, unremarkable to most. Her days were spent behind the counter at Dottie's Diner and Bakes, and her nights were a mix of laundry, homework with her daughter, and calls to her aging mother across town. She didn't travel, she didn't post much on social media. Her truck was 10 years old, her boots older. She didn't need much, but she always tried to give what she could, and tonight, what she had was a ride and a decision to make, because through the shimmering blur of rain on the glass, she saw him, a man walking alone along the shoulder of the road, soaked from head to toe. His backpack clung heavily to his back, and the weight of it bent his posture. Even from a distance, Emily could tell he was limping, favoring one leg with each step. He wore a dark green jacket, the kind she'd only seen on soldiers and recruitment posters. His hair was cropped tight, military style. His face was mostly shadowed by the rain in the hood. She slowed instinctively, and that's when the war began inside her own head. You don't pick up strangers, Emily, especially not alone, especially not in the dark. That's common sense. But then she remembered something else, something buried but familiar. Her father's voice, years ago, driving their old Dodge down this very road in another rainstorm. If you see someone who looks like they've been walking along a while and no one's bothered to stop, maybe you're meant to be the one who does. Emily pulled the truck to the side. The man didn't react at first. Maybe he didn't expect anyone to stop. Maybe he thought she was pulling over for herself. But when she lowered the window halfway and leaned across the seat, her voice just loud enough to carry through the pattering rain, he turned. "Hey," she called, "you all right out here?" The man paused, his hood fell back slightly as he turned his head. That's when she saw it. A deep scar stretched from his temple down beneath his jawline, pink and uneven, like old fire damage. He didn't speak right away, just stared at her, water dripping from his face, his shoulders heaving from the weight of the pack. "Not looking for trouble," he said, voice rough but steady. "I didn't say you were," Emily replied. They stared at each other for another second, then she pushed the passenger door open with her elbow. "I'm heading past the base turnoff," she said. "I can drop you at the gate." He hesitated, then nodded once. "Thanks." As he climbed in, the smell of wet canvas and old fatigue filled the cabin. He winced as he lowered himself into the seat, and Emily noticed the way he held his side gingerly, like it still hurt. His clothes weren't just wet, they were stained, torn in places. "You in the army?" she asked gently, pulling the truck back onto the road. "Was," he said, "just got discharged." Emily glanced sideways. "Honorable." He cracked a faint smile. "Is there any other kind?" There was a silence between them, filled only by the rhythm of the rain on metal and the steady hum of the heater. "My name's Emily," she offered. He nodded slowly. Logan Wells." They rode like that for a while. No radio, no small talk, just the sound of two lives intersecting on a road most people forgot about. She noticed the scar again when the overhead light flickered at a stop sign. It wasn't just on his face, it crawled down his neck, too, vanishing beneath his shirt. She didn't ask. "Some wounds you didn't touch?" "Not with words." "You from around here?" she asked instead. "No," he said, "passing through, trying to get to Wilton." "That's over 20 miles. "Yeah, on foot." He shrugged. "Didn't have many options." Emily gripped the wheel tighter. 20 miles in the cold rain, injured, carrying his own gear, no car, no one to pick him up. She felt the ache in that silence. Didn't the VA help? Logan gave a dry laugh. "They helped me out the door." The base turnoff came into view. Two dim streetlights, a rusted sign half covered in ivy, and a small security booth up ahead. "I can let you out here," Emily said, slowing the truck, but Logan didn't move. He looked ahead at the empty gate, then down at his scarred hands resting in his lap. "I don't have ID right now," he muttered. "Lost my wallet when I got discharged. They said the temporary docs would come by mail." Emily blinked. "You mean they let you walk out of a military hospital with no transport and no ID?" He gave her a tired look. "I didn't say it was a good system," she sighed. Pulling off to the side, he reached for the door handle, but before he could open it, she said something she hadn't planned to say at all. "Do you have somewhere to go tonight?" Logan looked back at her, the same guarded look, not fear, just weariness, like a man who had learned the hard way not to expect anything from anyone. "I'll find somewhere," he said. Emily shook her head. "That's not what I asked." "What unexpected bond forms on this rainy night?" Stay tuned to Graceful Valor Stories to find out. 10 minutes later, Logan Wells sat at the small kitchen table in Emily's trailer, still dripping from the rain. Mia, her daughter, had peeked around the hallway corner once, clutching a stuffed bear, before Emily gently ushered her back to bed. She wasn't reckless, she didn't leave her child with strangers, but something about Logan's presence didn't raise alarm bells. He looked broken, not dangerous, tired in the way only people who had seen too much too young ever looked. Emily handed him a towel and a warm mug of tea. "You don't owe me anything," she said. He nodded, but before she turned away, he reached into a soaked backpack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Slowly, with shaking fingers, he unfolded it. It was a metal, worn but intact bronze with a blue and white ribbon, purple heart. Emily said, not a question, she just stared at it, then looked at him. "For Afghanistan?" she asked. Logan nodded. "Third tour, you kept it wrapped like that?" "I didn't want to lose it." Emily didn't respond, she just reached across the table and carefully folded the cloth back over the metal, then slid it toward him. That night, Logan slept on the couch. She gave him extra blankets and left a note on the coffee table with the Wi-Fi password and where the coffee was. She didn't ask questions, not yet, and in the early morning, before the sun had even lifted the fog off the cornfields, Logan was gone. No note, no goodbye, just the folded towel left neatly on the cushion and a purple heart medal placed quietly beside the sink. Emily stood there staring at it, one hand on the counter, one hand covering her mouth. She didn't understand it then, but something had begun. A spark, a chain reaction, and in time, that quiet act on a rainy night would circle back in a way no one, least of all Emily, could have predicted. It had been 12 days since Logan Wells left. The towel was still folded on the couch cushion where he'd slept. The purple heart, clean, polished, and impossibly heavy for its size, remained tucked in Emily's kitchen drawer next to a few pens, spare keys, and a rubber band ball her daughter Mia had made in first grade. Emily hadn't told anyone, not her coworkers at the diner, not her mother, who would have asked far too many questions, not even her best friend, Nora, who'd probably ask why on earth she let a scarred, limping stranger into her home at night, because the truth was, Emily didn't know how to explain it. It wasn't logic, it wasn't instinct, it wasn't even charity, it was something quieter, deeper, like answering a call she hadn't even known she was listening for. And now, in the quiet hours before dawn, her daughter asleep, the heater clicking softly, the moonlight casting long shadows across the old linoleum, Emily felt it. The storm hadn't passed, it had just moved inward. 2 days later, the letter arrived. She found it tucked awkwardly in her mailbox, half soaked from the morning rain. No return address, no postage stamp. Inside was a single line written in blocky, uneven handwriting. "You reminded me I still mattered. I'll find a way to repay that. LW." That was it. No apology, no explanation, no forwarding address. Emily stared at the words until they blurred, then she folded the paper in half, placed it inside the same drawer as the metal, and closed it softly, like someone laying flowers at a grave. But while Logan had disappeared, real life hadn't. The notice came later that week, a thick envelope from the local credit union. Emily didn't have to open it to know what it was. The foreclosure process had officially begun. Her father's house, the one she grew up in, the one she'd inherited with more repairs than walls, was now marked delinquent. A string of missed mortgage payments, rising interest, and ignored letters had finally caught up with her. She'd done everything she could. The bakery paid minimum wage and not a penny more. Her side hustle selling baked goods at the farmer's market barely covered groceries. She'd sold the jewelry her mother left her. She'd canceled the internet 3 times, only to reconnect it when Mia's school required Zoom sessions. She had cut corners on everything but one thing. Her daughter, Mia, deserved the light kept on, the heater running, the walls to stay standing. Emily bit her lip and reread the second page. 30 days, that's what they gave her. 30 days until the place that held her life would be boxed, boarded, and auctioned to the highest bidder. At work, she kept smiling. She poured coffee, stacked pie slices into takeout boxes, and wiped down cracked boots at closing time. No one noticed anything different because Emily had always been the same: quiet, reliable, kind. But kindness doesn't stop foreclosure, kindness doesn't pay back loans, kindness doesn't explain to an 8-year-old why the room with the unicorn wallpaper might not be hers next month. One night, as she closed up Dottie's, Nora caught her wiping down the counter for the 3rd time. "Okay," her friend said. "Spill it." Emily glanced up. "What?" "You've been staring through people for a week. You forgot Mia's snack day, and today you served Officer Clay his coffee without cinnamon." "I was distracted." "No," Nora said, walking around the counter. "You're drowning." Emily hesitated, then she told her, not everything, but enough, about the letter, the house, the math that didn't add up, the countdown. She couldn't stop, and when she finished, Nora didn't gasp, didn't lecture, she just leaned against the counter, crossed her arms, and said, "Well, That sucks. Emily let out a surprised laugh, a weak, watery one, but real. Yeah, she whispered, it really does. The next morning, Emily dropped Mia off at school and drove past the town's old VFW hall. A hand-painted sign hung out front, Veteran Support Breakfast, this Saturday, all welcome. She almost kept driving, but something in her chest tugged her foot off the gas. Maybe it was the letter, maybe it was the metal, or maybe it was the memory of Logan's quiet voice in the truck that night when he'd said, didn't have many options. Saturday came. She arrived at the breakfast with a tray of her best honey oat loaves, warm and wrapped in cloth. The room inside was modest, folding tables, tin coffee pots, and a dozen veterans in faded ball caps and worn denim. They welcomed her with quiet nods. A few recognized her from the diner. One man, older and hunched, offered to carry her tray. Emily didn't know what she was doing there, but she stayed. She served, she poured coffee, she smiled, and as she wiped down a table near the back, one of the younger veterans, early 30s, sharp eyes, looked up from his plate and said, "You're Emily Rodas, right?" She froze. "Yeah," she said slowly. The man stood, wiping his hands. "I think you know someone I served with." Emily's heart skipped. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper, not a letter, a photo. In it, Logan Wells in full gear, desert fatigues, leaning on a crutch, grinning with half his face bandaged, surrounded by 5 other men in uniform. "He sent this a few weeks ago." The man said he met someone in Pennsylvania, said she reminded him of who he used to be. Emily stared at the photo. "I didn't know he had anyone left," she said quietly. The man shook his head. "Logan doesn't talk much, not since the fire, but when he does, he means it." He handed her the photo. "Thank you for seeing him." Not many do that night. Emily pinned the photo above her kitchen sink. It wasn't much, but somehow it felt like a tether, a thread tying her quiet corner of the world to something bigger, something worth holding on to. 3 weeks passed. The deadline loomed like a silent storm cloud, pressing closer with each sunrise. Emily tried calling the credit union, tried extending, delaying, begging. She was met with polite sympathy and legal indifference. "Unless something changes dramatically, Miss Rodas," the woman on the phone said, "there's not much more we can do." And then came the knock. 7 p.m. Emily had just finished setting the table, tomato soup and grilled cheese, the cheap stuff, but Mia loved it. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door. There, standing on her front porch, were 2 men in uniform, not police, not local military. Behind them, 2 black SUVs idled at the curb, and standing between them, even in the dim porch light, was Logan Wells, this time in full dress uniform. No rein, no limp, no backpack, just him, and a thin envelope held gently in his hand. What life-altering surprise awaits Emily? Stay with Graceful Valor Stories to see. For a moment, Emily didn't move. She just stood in the doorway, one hand still clutching the towel, the porch light casting a warm glow on the scarred face of the man she hadn't seen since that rainy night weeks ago. "Logan," she whispered, like saying it aloud might make it vanish. He offered a small nod. "Evening, Emily." Behind him, the 2 uniformed men remained silent. One wore the stripes of a master sergeant, the other a captain's insignia. Both stood with quiet posture and alert eyes, not cold, just formal, respectful. Emily's heart raced, her throat tightened. She looked at the envelope in Logan's hand, then back to his face. What is this?" Logan stepped forward slowly, carefully, no limp this time. Whatever injuries had haunted him that night, he'd either healed or learned to carry them better. "It's long overdue," he said, placing the envelope in her palm. "But it's only the beginning." Emily blinked. "Beginning of what?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to the 2 men behind him. "Gentlemen," the captain stepped forward and extended his hand. "Ms. Rodas, I'm Captain Stephen Marks, United States Army. We're here on behalf of the Office of Veteran Community Engagement in the 5th Special Recon Unit." Emily just nodded numbly. Her legs felt suddenly weak. "We'd like to speak with you," he continued gently. "If now is a good time." Emily stepped aside almost on instinct. Mia, wide-eyed and barefoot in her pajamas, stood at the hallway entrance. Emily turned quickly. "Sweetie, it's all right, just some visitors." The captain smiled and knelt down slightly. "Hi there, I'm Stephen." Mia held her bear a little tighter. "Are you real soldiers?" "We are," Logan said, kneeling to her level, "but we're not here for a mission. We're here to say thank you to your mom." Mia blinked. "Why?" Logan looked at Emily. "Because she changed someone's life when no one else would." They sat around the small kitchen table, Emily, Logan, the captain, and the master sergeant, while Mia, after much reassurance, returned to her room with a promise of ice cream tomorrow. The envelope still rested unopened in front of her. Logan spoke first. "Emily, the night you picked me up, I was in a bad place, worse than I let on." She nodded quietly. "I could tell. I'd just been discharged from a VA rehab facility in Harrisburg, not because I was ready, but because they were full budget cuts." Emily winced. "I had nowhere to go. My ID was lost in the fire back in Arizona. I didn't even have enough for a bus ticket. I was walking to Wilton because a buddy of mine used to live there. I didn't know if he still did." He paused. "I wasn't just cold that night, I was done." Emily felt a chill ripple through her despite the heater humming behind them. "You didn't know this," Logan continued, "but I had a bottle in That bag unopened, my last one. I was going to find a place to disappear. Her throat tightened. Logan, but then you stopped. He said simply, you didn't ask what I'd done, you didn't flinch at the scars, you didn't treat me like a burden, you handed me a towel and let me feel like a human being for the first time in months. Emily's eyes burned. Logan turned to the others. I wrote my team that same night, told them something rare happened to me, something decent. They passed it up the chain. Word spread. The captain stepped in, and now, Ms. Rodas, we're here because that act of kindness didn't go unnoticed. He reached into a black folder and slid a single page across the table. It was a formal letter on Department of Defense letterhead. At the top, in bold, Certificate of Community Honor issued to Ms. Emily Rodas. Beneath that, a paragraph, for her exceptional compassion, bravery, and quiet service to a wounded veteran of the United States Army. Emily Rodas is recognized as an honorary civilian contributor to veteran resilience and recovery initiatives with all corresponding privileges and acknowledgments. At the bottom, a golden embossed seal and a signature. Emily blinked. That's the Secretary of the Army. The captain smiled. Yes, ma'am, but it didn't stop there. The master sergeant leaned forward, laying a second document beside the first. This one was smaller, more personal. This, he said, was the part Logan insisted on. Emily read it slowly. It was a letter from a private military foundation she'd never heard of, a non-profit built by veterans, funded through anonymous donors, and it contained one sentence that made her heart nearly stop. This letter confirms full acquisition and forgiveness of mortgage debt associated with the property at 412 County Road, Millfield, Pennsylvania. Her home, her father's home, saved. Tears welled up before she could stop them. Why? She asked, voice cracking. Why would they do this for me? Logan answered softly, because what you did that night wasn't just about me, it was a reminder that somewhere in the world, quiet kindness still exists, and that matters to all of us. They stayed for only an hour, long enough to answer questions, long enough to see her smile through the tears, long enough to promise they'd be in touch again before leaving. Logan reached into his jacket pocket. I have one more thing. He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a metal coin, round, heavy, engraved. She turned it over slowly. One side held the emblem of Logan's unit, the other a phrase. She didn't ask, she just acted. Emily swallowed. It's a challenge coin, Logan said, usually reserved for acts of valor within the military, but now and then, we give them to civilians who remind us what we fight for. She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and held the coin close. Later that night, after Mia fell asleep, Emily sat by the window with a blanket and stared out at the stars. She thought about all the nights she'd lain awake, wondering how to hold her life together, wondering if anyone would ever see the quiet way she fought day after day. And now someone had seen, someone had remembered, someone had come back. For days after the soldiers left, Emily moved through her life with a strange, almost reverent stillness, like the world had shifted slightly, but only she had noticed. She'd stand at the sink washing dishes and find herself glancing at the framed certificate on the wall. She'd pass the drawer where Logan's medal still rested, now beside the challenge coin, and feel something warm spread quietly through her chest. Her home was safe, she could breathe again, but more than that, something inside her had changed. It wasn't pride, it wasn't attention-seeking, it was purpose. Unexpected, unfamiliar, but deeply grounding. Word of the visit spread. Of course, small towns didn't keep secrets for long. At first, it was just whispers, customers lingering too long at the bakery counter, trying to make sense of the SUVs parked outside Emily's house. Then came the questions. Was that really military brass in your driveway last week? You doing okay? I heard something about some letter from Washington. Some folks were just curious, a few were skeptical, but others looked at her differently now, with respect, with recognition. Not the kind you demanded, but the kind you earned when no one was looking. 3 weeks after the visit, Emily received another envelope. This one was official, with a Department of Veterans Affairs seal on the front. Inside was a short note and an invitation. Ms. Emily Rodas, on behalf of the Veteran Resilience Network of Eastern Pennsylvania, we would be honored if you would consider serving as a community advisor to our civilian support initiative. There was a phone number, an email, and a handwritten postscript from Logan. Just show up, that's all you ever needed to do. Emily didn't answer right away. She left the envelope on the table for 2 days, staring at it between folding laundry and making grilled cheese for Mia. She wasn't qualified, she didn't have a degree in psychology, she didn't serve, she didn't even know what a civilian support initiative really was, but the memory kept pulling her back. Logan, drenched and silent, sitting in her truck, the weight in his voice when he'd said, you didn't flinch at the scars. Maybe this wasn't about qualifications, maybe it was about being the kind of person who doesn't look away. Emily said yes. The meetings were simple at first. She drove to a small office on the outskirts of Wilton once a week, where a group of veterans and civilian volunteers gathered in a converted shipping container with mismatched shares and coffee that tasted like burnt dirt. They didn't ask much of her, just to listen, to speak when she had something real to say, and over time, she did. She talked about what it was like to grow up watching her father, himself a Vietnam vet, flinch at fireworks every July. She talked about how lonely it felt raising a daughter with no safety net. She talked about Logan, about that night, about what it meant to choose kindness without expecting anything in return. They listened, they nodded, and slowly, word spread that spring, a man named Harvey sat beside her in the parking lot after a session. He was in his 60s, strong shoulders, sun-damaged skin, a stiffness in his legs that hadn't come from age alone. You know, he said, lighting a cigarette with calloused hands, I used to think civvies didn't get it. Emily glanced at him. Some probably don't. Harvey nodded. But you didn't need to get it to show up, you just did. He took a long drag, then flicked the ash away. We need more people like that. Emily looked out across the gravel lot, sunlight bouncing off the metal roofs. She didn't feel brave, she didn't feel special, she just felt present, and maybe that was enough. Back in Millfield, life kept moving. Mia turned 9. The bakery gave Emily more hours and a key to open the store when Dottie couldn't make it. Nora brought over wine on Fridays and still teased her about being the local hero, but it was always with a smile. Now, sometimes veterans stopped by, men and women she'd never met, strangers from other towns asking for Emily by name. They didn't stay long, some just wanted a coffee, some left folded notes, some just nodded and walked away, but every single one of them had that look in their eyes, the look Logan had, the one that said, I didn't think anyone would notice. And every time she did, then came the storm, not a literal one, though April brought plenty of rain, but a sudden, quiet unraveling that began with a voicemail. Hey, Emily, this is Greg from County Services. I hate to bother you, but there's something odd in the property records I think you should see. Can you swing by when you get a chance? Emily felt her stomach turn. The office was dim and cluttered with file boxes. Greg, a county clerk with a forgettable face and too many pens in his shirt pocket, looked uneasy. I know the Army folks cleared your mortgage, he said, gesturing to a paper in front of him, but when we scanned the deed last week, something came up. Emily leaned in. There's a lien still attached to the land from 20 years ago, before your father passed. Her heart sank. What kind of lien? A loan he took out after your mother died. It was buried. No one flagged it because the debt was sold to a private agency. He paused. They filed a claim 3 days ago. Technically, they have a legal right to the acreage behind your house, including your garden and shed. Emily felt like the air had been knocked from her lungs, but the mortgage was just the house. Greg said gently, the land is separate. She drove home in silence, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, back to square one again. Her home was safe, but not her land, and without the land, it wouldn't feel like home for long. That night, after Mia fell asleep, Emily sat on the porch and stared out over the dark silhouette of the fields, the same fields her father once tilled with hands twice as tired as hers, the same shed where she'd buried years of worn tools, pickles and mason jars, and memories. She couldn't lose it, not again. She took out her phone, scrolled through contacts, paused, then typed, Hi, Logan, I know you've already done more than I could ever ask, but something's come up. She hit send, then whispered into the night, please let kindness keep going. Logan called the next morning. He didn't ask for details, just listened, and then he said with the same quiet steadiness he had that first night, I'll take care of it. 3 days later, a man in a charcoal gray suit stepped into the county office, briefcase in hand, credentials in pocket. He didn't give a speech, he didn't threaten, he simply presented a document bearing a judge's seal and a federal stamp, declaring that the lien was invalid. The loan had been fraudulently reactivated. The agency, a shell company, already under investigation. It was over, for real this time. Emily cried in her truck for 10 minutes straight before she could even turn the ignition. Logan never bragged. When she called to thank him, he simply said, you already paid it forward, I just made sure it kept moving. Emily smiled through the tears. Still, I don't know how to repay you. You already did, he replied, you just don't know it yet. Later that week, she found a letter tucked into her mailbox, handwritten, no return address. Inside, what you grow in quiet places will one day feed someone you'll never meet, and beneath that, a single word is semper, Latin for always. Emily folded the note, placed it next to the coin in her drawer, and sat in the silence for a long time, not empty, not waiting, but full of everything that had taken root. By the time summer arrived, the lilacs had returned to the edge of Emily's yard. Their scent drifted through the open kitchen windows as bees hovered lazily over the garden she once feared would be taken from her. The land was hers now, truly hers, and it felt different. Everything did, not flashy, not loud, but deeply, beautifully different. Emily stood barefoot in the soil one early morning, a woven basket in hand, lifting fresh tomatoes from the vine. Dew sparkled on the leaves, chickens clucked quietly near the coop. It was a small scene, one the world wouldn't think twice about, but to her, it was everything she'd fought to keep. Her daughter still sleeping peacefully in the room she almost lost, the pantry stocked from a garden no one could take, at the porch, once silent and uncertain, now full of laughter most evenings. Life had returned, not just to the farm, but to her, and it began, she thought, with a stranger in the rain. Logan didn't visit often, but when he did, He never came alone, he brought friends, quiet veterans who didn't talk much but built things, repaired fences, rewired her shed, fixed the loose latch on her front gate like it mattered to national security. They never stayed for long, but they left behind something more permanent than repairs: respect, community, protection. One of them, a quiet man named Reggie, showed up a week after the lien was cleared and wordlessly installed solar panels on her roof. "I didn't ask for these," she said. Watching him work, Reggie just nodded. Logan said sunlight helps things grow. At the farmer's market, people began to linger longer at her table. Some asked for stories, others brought pies. One woman from 2 towns over simply hugged her, whispered, "You reminded my son he still mattered," and left before Emily could ask her name. They all knew her now, but it wasn't fame, it was something gentler, a kind of reverence reserved not for heroes, but for healers. One Sunday morning, while organizing produce in her stand, Emily saw a familiar figure approach, tall, broad-shouldered, with slow, even gait that no longer hinted at pain. Logan, he was in civilian clothes, simple jeans and a flannel shirt, but his posture was the same, still a soldier, still steady. She smiled. "Already walking around the stand? You're early." He shrugged. "Didn't want the strawberries to sell out." She handed him a basket without asking. They sat on the tailgate of her truck beneath the old oak tree near the lot. For a long time, they didn't say much. Sometimes words ruined things that were already perfect. Eventually, Logan spoke. "I've been asked to take a new position," he said, turning a strawberry stem between his fingers. Emily looked over. "Where?" "Washington, advisory role, civilian veteran engagement. They want someone who knows what it feels like on both sides." She smiled softly. "That sounds like something you were built for." He chuckled. "I'm still learning." He paused. "I don't want to leave," he added. She looked at him. "Then don't." Another pause. "I also don't want to stay if it means I'm running from what I meant to do." Emily nodded slowly. "So go, but come back when you're ready." He smiled at her like she'd said something holy. That night, he helped her clean up after the market. Before leaving, he pulled something from his pocket. A pin is silver, simple, it was shaped like a seed. "This is part of a new project," he said, "the Kindness Initiative. Real quiet things, small things. We give this to people who pass it forward." She took it in her palm. It was cool, heavy, meaningful. "I'm not the hero," she said. Logan stepped back, motioning to the land, the barn, the people around them packing up. "No, but you planted something they'll all grow from." The seasons changed again. Mia started 5th grade with a backpack covered in patches and a new confidence her mother hadn't seen before. The house stayed warm through the fall, powered by the sun and stubbornness. And Emily became a quiet anchor in the lives of others. The veteran support group she once joined became hers to lead. She organized community dinners, helped build a memorial garden outside the town library, connected mothers of fallen soldiers with wives of returning vets. She never made speeches, but people listened when she spoke because she had earned their silence. First, one winter night, just after the first snowfall, Emily was locking up the bakery when a car pulled into the lot. A man stepped out. She didn't recognize him. Young face, pale shoulders, tense beneath his oversized coat. "Are you the woman who helped Logan Wells?" he asked. Emily hesitated. "I was one of them." The man nodded quickly, eyes glassy. "I'm his cousin. We haven't spoken in years, but I read about you in the letter he sent to our family last month." He pulled a folded envelope from his coat. "He asked me to give you this," and then, just as quickly, he was gone. Back home, beneath the quiet glow of her living room lamp, Emily opened the letter. It was short, written in Logan's blocky, familiar script. "Emily, I always believed the battlefield defined us, that only in war did we learn who we were, but I was wrong. Kindness does the same thing. It reveals us, sharpens us, softens the places war left ragged. You didn't just give me a ride, you gave me permission to live again, and through that, you gave something to everyone I've touched since. The road you opened in me, I'll never stop walking. Thank you for seeing me when I was disappearing. Semper, Logan." Emily closed the letter with trembling hands. She walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer. Inside it, the purple heart, the challenge coin, the note that read, "What you grow in quiet places," and now Logan's letter. She placed them all in a small wooden box and set it on the mantel above the fireplace. Not a shrine, a reminder that lives change quietly, that roots grow unseen, and that kindness never returns empty. In the spring, Emily started something new, a small sign outside her garden: "Free produce for any veteran, no questions, no limits," and below that, smaller: "If you've served, let the earth serve you now." She didn't advertise it, but they came. Some left with bags of vegetables, some left handshakes, letters, salutes, tears, and one day, a young soldier just stood silently at the edge of the garden for 15 minutes, then whispered, "Thank you," and walked away without taking anything. Emily watched him go, then turned back to the rows of growing things. On her birthday, a package arrived, no name, no return address. Inside was a replica of the medal she once held for Logan. In a frame, in it, a photo of Logan standing beside a podium in D.C., speaking into a microphone, his hand resting over his heart. Behind him, projected on a massive screen, was a quote. She didn't ask, she just acted, and below that, her name, Emily Rodas. She stared at it for a long time, then hung it on the wall right next to the pantry door, not because it needed a place of honor, but because every time she fed someone, she'd remember where it all began: a night, a truck, and the decision to turn towards someone instead of away, because sometimes the smallest seed planted in the middle of a storm becomes the harvest that feeds everyone who comes after. And Emily, she never stopped planting, not in fields, not in hearts, not in the kind of places most people overlooked, but where the real growth always begins, in our darkest moments. Kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition, some just need to know that today someone isn't going hungry, and sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.